Awesome. Okay. And all right. So yeah, welcome to what is GenAI and can it be used ethically? This is fall 2025, and my name is Greg Bem. I'm one of the SCC librarians, and we do this session almost every quarter. It changes a little bit every quarter when new things happen in the world, of course, or new ideas come out. But this is something that we try to run regularly so that more students can get access to this content. Here is our agenda for today. We're going to be doing some learning outcomes, brief introductions, a quick activity. Then we'll talk about GenAI basics. We'll talk about common tools. Welcome. We'll go into the concepts of prompts and iterations. We will cover contexts in higher education and the professional world, and then close out with some issues and benefits and some recommendations. And we'll see how far we get. Last week, we did not cover everything 100% because there's just so much in here, but it was also a bigger group. So yeah, welcome in the room. So here's some learning outcomes today. We're going to be focused on providing basic information on generative artificial intelligence or GenAI technology. We're going to highlight basic tools, functionality, and trends. We will talk about higher ed and professional contexts, identify potential problems and benefits of the technology, and ethical considerations. And if you don't know what ethics are, what ethical means, we'll talk about that briefly too. And finally, recommend practices for using GenAI at the college. So if you walk away with some understanding of each of these things, that means I've been successful today, and you will hopefully have learned something you didn't know already and maybe have some more food for thought, as that is the biggest part of this presentation, is the questions that it raises. Does that sound good to everybody? Ready to rock and roll? Okay.
Sounds good to
Awesome.
me.
So let's do introductions. What is your name? What is your program area? And what brings you here today? And we will start in the room since there's one person here. Get it out of the way.
So my name is Joseph. My program area, you could say, is video game development. I'm making a video game right now,
Okay.
and I'm here to learn more about AI and how I can use that with developing features, whether that's code, art, music, anything.
Great. Fantastic. Welcome, Joseph. Online. Let's move online. Would anyone like to go first?
I suppose I do. My name's William Bartlett. I'm in business hospitalities. I'm doing this for extra credit and also to learn a little bit more about it, AI. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks. Thanks for being here. Anyone else want to go?
I'm Natasha. I'm currently in an accounting program, but I'm taking business communications. And this was a required part of the course. So I don't know. I thought it sounded fun.
Okay. I hope it's fun. I like to consider myself a fun presenter. So yeah, hope you get something out of this, Natasha. And finally,
I'm Misty. I am in the administrative assistant program. Our business correspondence class, required us to listen to some of these, and this one intrigued me more than some of the other ones. Not anything against the other ones, but
right on. Cool. Well, thanks for choosing mine. We will talk about the other ones at the end of this presentation. But fantastic. Thanks so much, everyone, for introducing yourself and being here today. Oh, real quick, before we go into our activity, I just want to point out that some of these images that are in this presentation were generated by ChatGPT. So there's an image generation feature in that tool, and you might notice some of the strange things about these images, like the text is all messed up, or maybe some of the features of the figures are a little strange. The speech bubbles might not be quite there. That's not to disturb anyone, but I just want people to understand that these were generated and not terribly designed by myself. Okay. Let's move on to our brief activity here today. So if you can go to menti.com, or if you want to use your phone, if it's easier for you, this is an anonymous polling tool. So basically, we're going to ask a few questions, entirely anonymous, just to get your understanding and ideas around AI as a group together. We have a small group, but it's mighty. And I'm going to close out of this PowerPoint real quick and move over to that presentation. And I will share the code in a second here. So if you are here in the Teams room and you're at menti.com, you can just type in 6389-2873 to join, or it's easier for you. See, one person's in the room, that's great. Here's the QR code again. And let me know if you have any issue getting there. While we're waiting, I see we have 2 people out of our 3. Our first question is, what is your experience with GenAI tools? Maybe you've never heard of them, you've never used them, you've tried them once or twice. Use them when you need to every so often. Use them nearly every day, or you're even using them right now. I can say I'm using it right now because Microsoft Teams that's running this presentation has a transcription feature that is based on GenAI. So
That's pretty cool.
escape it sometimes.
So generation part, not just like Chat GPT.
No, that is one of the tools, ChatGPT. Anything that can generate text and et cetera. And we'll talk more about that.
So Chat GPT does that?
Does what?
The transcription.
Well, Microsoft uses Copilot, which is based on ChatGPT. Yeah.
Okay.
Next question. If you've used a GenAI tool, what is its name? And since there's such a small group today, if you want to throw in more than one answer to this one, you're more than welcome to. And there's a lot of them. So we already know that ChatGPT is one of them. Okay, ChatGPT, Gemini, okay. ChatGPT 5, okay, nice. That's the number of the version of ChatGPT. And we'll wait a couple more seconds to see if any others come through.
I also use DeepSeek.
DeepSeek, okay, nice. DeepSeek is another one. And if you have heard of them, well, everyone's heard of them, everyone's contributed, so we're going to move on past that slide. What is one ethical issue connected to Gen AI? Again, we'll talk about what ethics really is later today, but maybe you've heard about it in the news, some of the issues that have come up. Maybe you've thought about it and you have your own thoughts, feelings, and opinions. Maybe you have no opinions, or you don't know. Maybe it's completely new to you. That's fine too. Give it another minute or so for this one. Plagiarism, disinformation, great. Copyright infringement. Yeah, those, we'll talk more about those for sure. So I see plagiarism and disinformation as being related, but also separate. And copyright infringement is a huge umbrella topic, but definitely one that comes up with copyright law and the rules around copyright. And finally, what is one word you would use to describe how you feel about Gen AI, or just in general, artificial intelligence today? Welcome back, Misty. If you want to answer this question in the chat or out loud, you can, since it might take you a minute to get in to our activity here. But okay, we've got spectacular, amazing, sketchy, game changer. I like the hyphen there. That makes it one word.
One word.
Yeah, so I always like to point out with these activities, well, first of all, I appreciate the creativity that you bring to that activity, but it's a spectrum, right? We have on one end, I would say spectacular and amazing and game changer, and on the other hand, sketchy. There's a wide variety of opinions, perspectives, understandings, and it's all good. It's all okay. This is what we're dealing with as a collective, and this is kind of my soapbox spiel to begin with, but we're all at different places with this technology, and that's what makes it so wonderful in terms of learning about it, is that we can bring a lot of different perspectives to the conversation. And I see in the chat we have helpful is another word. So in this case, we're leaning towards pro, but in the last week, the majority of people were actually really critical and negative about it, and it was a different tone in the room, which is fine. I like to, time and time again, recommend the two-word perspective, curious and cautious. Being curious about what the technology is, but also think about it, critically think about it, and be cautious as it transforms the world around us. I think that's our last question. Okay, so thank you all for participating in that presentation. Polling software, and then it always does this with PowerPoint, so I need to redo. Ooh, okay. Okay, so let's move into the lecture part of the presentation. We're going to start off with a basic definition of AI, or artificial intelligence. That is a huge word. It's existed for decades and decades, but IBM defines it as technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human learning, comprehension, problem solving, decision making, creativity, and autonomy. All of those qualities that we often think of as very human-like makes us human, makes us capable of being human. It is technology that is simulating those qualities. AI is more than just a definition. It is more than just the technology itself. Often there are ideas and concepts and conversations around what all of that means. And that is now happening across multiple disciplines. It's not just nerdy people in labs or in front of a computer talking about AI, but it's impacting a lot of other places and spaces as well. So we can think of AI as a field of study, or even a perspective or framing of how we look at the world. So computer science, data analytics and statistics, hardware and software, engineering, linguistics, neuroscience, even philosophy and psychology. Now with GenAI, we're also seeing it in video game development. We're seeing it in business, small, medium business, corporations, and larger business. We're seeing it in culinary arts, and bakeries are even using AI when they're coming up with new ways to deliver their products and services. AI is spreading. The concept of AI is spreading to almost every part of human existence. And that could be frightening, and that could be exciting, or a little bit of both. But it is a field. It is a way of thinking about the world. When we talk about Gen AI, which is why we're here today, we're talking about generative or generate. Generative AI refers to deep learning models that can generate high quality text, images, and other content based on the data they were trained on. So I use this example, and I saw a cat in one of the videos today. I love seeing our feline friends show up here and there. I use this example as a way to understand Gen AI in a simple way. If you took 10 million photos of a cat and you uploaded that to one computer and you had an algorithm, a computer system that ran and that said, okay, look at all of these photos of these cats, these 10 million photos of these cats, look for the patterns of what makes these photos cat photos. That is your definition of a cat. It will do that. It will quote unquote learn what that means, what that is, based on the ears and the tail and the body proportions and the face, and then the behaviors and where cats are and what they like to do, all of the things about cats. And then they will have documented this impression or this understanding of what a cat is. Then, when a human comes to the computer and says, create a cat picture for me, it will have 10 million ideas of that cat to work with, to define what cat is. Now you take that and you just add everything else that we've ever created, from pictures and videos of dogs, from poems, from articles on Spokane, from video game ideas and concepts and worlds and levels, from small business plans, all of the things. And you have super powerful computers that have basically trained themselves on understanding all of those concepts. And then you connect them all with linguistics and language, grammar, vocabulary. And that suddenly creates the tools that we're using today that have become so popular in so many different contexts. Does that make sense to folks?
Yeah.
I'm going to dive in a
Yes.
little bit deeper. Hey, welcome, Angie. So just a real quick, I'm not going to go through this all, real quick snapshot of where GenAI lives in a bigger context of AI. We started with AI broadly, and now we're looking at GenAI. You can see that GenAI is a small component of what are these automated and large-scale systems. GenAI can create those fun cat photos and help you write a poem or create a business plan or give you ideas for level creation in video games. But when you start to scale it upwards, you get to other concepts of AI. What we think of as traditional AI, which includes facial detection, image recognition, and so on. Then moving up to AGI and ASI. And these different types of AIs, artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence, these are large systems that have many types of functionality that often we can't even really conceive of because they're so big. But we have seen them in popular media. Do any of you like science fiction?
Oh yeah.
Any sci-fi nerds in the room?
Yeah, right here.
So yeah, may have seen some of these movies. There's newer movies as well that go into these, and books, of course. A lot of these are based on books. And these ideas have been around for, at this point, about 100 years, arguably even longer. And so when you look at these movies and you watch the technology in these movies, I think it's an easy way to kind of see how this technology is integrated in various forms of society, as well as what the human relationships are to the technologies, how humans connect with AI as it shows up. If you haven't seen the movies on this slide, these are some of the ones that I think are really strong examples and provide a spectrum of representation of AI. But there are a gazillion out there. Does anyone have any other recommendations for books or movies that capture AI really well? The Matrix. Yeah, okay, that's a good one. What's that?
Energy.
Yeah. The energy use of AI. Yeah, anyone else? All right, well, you could definitely find a lot of other examples out there. So GenAI qualities, I already described with the cat example how it works, but essentially what those systems are that are processing those data sets, they're called large language models, LLMs. So that's a keyword that you should be familiar with, a vocabulary term. You'll see that in articles and hear about LLMs. These are doing very, very advanced machine learning algorithms to process that information, look for patterns, identify and define what concepts are, and connecting it all with language. We have various examples that you can see in the products themselves. Everyone just says ChatGPT. GPT is actually the name of the LLM. It's Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Another example is in DeepThink, which was a tool that someone mentioned earlier this morning. The R1, R stands for reasoning. So that's their reasoning model. And when we think about how these systems work to define and provide an understanding of concepts, we are looking at systems that are trained on many, many documents and sources of information. It's not just a handful of cat photos to define a cat. It's millions and millions and maybe even billions. These systems and the companies that manage these systems have access to a lot of information, some of which they used without permission, including art, visual art, and written art on the web, social media posts on Facebook and Reddit and X, lots of different types of sources of information, even books, scanned books. Essentially, if there is information in a database out there on the internet, or able to be provided by a seller of information, these companies have gained access to it and have used those data sets to inform their LLMs. When we talk about GenAI, often we're looking at the tools themselves, and we'll see these in a minute, but most of these tools require user input to work, unlike the surveillance systems that are powered by AI, for example. When we're looking at GenAI tools, we're looking at tools like ChatGPT, where there is a prompt bar and a way for the individual human user to enter in some kind of prompt to get a response. A couple more things about GenAI tools. They're being developed mostly by for-profit companies, but there is an active open source community. So for those of you in the room that like video game development, you could actually find GenAI tools that are open source that developers are creating and sharing with the community together. So that might be something to look into. A lot of these tools can be found on a website called Hugging Face. Really weird name, I know, but that's one of the places where the LLMs, including new versions of Llama, which is Meta's LLM, as well as DeepSeek, are being shared. Many of these platforms are free. They have free versions, but many of them have more advanced features that you have to pay to access. They're all often available through your web browser, but most of the apps are also on your phone as individual apps. And there are offline options too. If you're interested, if you like to travel a lot or you don't want to access the internet when you're doing your work, there are some offline LLM tools that use the open source LLMs. And in terms of trends and culturally with these tools, many of them we can't really escape anymore. If any of you have an Android phone, you are probably well aware that Gemini is showing up everywhere on your Android now. Windows, similarly, we have Copilot showing up all over Microsoft Windows. And even in tools and software that we historically have used without GenAI, we're now seeing GenAI embedded in it in new ways, like with Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator, for example, or Canva, another design software. There are AI tools, and AI is the whole great new thing, and it's really difficult to not see GenAI when we open these tools. Real quick, if some of you probably have seen this before or seen these outputs before, but when we put in our input, when we type in what we want the GenAI tool to provide, outputs that come back can be plain text, so simple text responses, also formatted text. So GenAI tools are now capable of creating tables or bulleted lists with headers or computer code Entire computer applications can be created with these tools. Many tools now have the ability to create still images, including diagrams and graphs, animated images, video, even video now with sound. And we now have tools that can create entire songs or musical files. And those are becoming more and more popular for better and for worse on Spotify and YouTube. We have entire bands that exist that are releasing albums, and there are no humans in these bands. They're all prompted with GenAI tools. We also have examples of music and video that have been done in emulation of other real people or real directors. For example, last year there was a really popular, entirely fictional Drake and the Weeknd partnership song. It was not, neither of them had anything to do with the music. It was just a song based on other songs that both of those artists had created. So it's important to think about who is creating these behind the inputs. There are some humans that are putting in the inputs, that are developing these things, but they're using specific types of data sets to generate the output. So here's a few popular GenAI tools. Have you all heard of these? Are these all familiar to you?
I've heard of 3 of them, not the other 2.
What are the 2 you have not heard of?
The Claude and the DeepSeek.
Okay, yeah. Claude is really big. A lot of professionals use it. It's the one tool on the list that Amazon is funding significantly. So you might hear of Amazon investing in AI, and this is the tool that they're backing. And DeepSeek is an open source tool, 100% free, and it is based in China. So you can use it similarly to ChatGPT. It has a very similar interface. It is the one tool on this list that is not developed in the United States. Any other folks? Have you seen these? Used them maybe?
I use ChatGPT a lot.
Yep, that's probably the most popular.
I was gonna say I use ChatGPT quite regularly to like help me proofread my homework.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, proofreading is a very, yeah, we see that a lot at the college. Nice. Okay.
Gemini user of the group.
Gemini user, what do you like about Gemini?
It helps me format my meeting minutes.
Okay, that's a really nice example, practical example for the workforce, what one might do in their job. So thanks for sharing that. So let's talk again about vocabulary. We're going to talk about prompts and iterations. So I think everyone has used GenAI a little bit already, so you're probably familiar that most of these interfaces, they're kind of like search engines where you enter in some text, that's the input, and you get the output. We call that prompting. You're not searching ChatGPT per se. You would prompt ChatGPT to get a response. Not everyone uses that word when they're talking about using ChatGPT, but that is the technical word. That is the phrase or keywords that is entered into the search box. In many platforms, prompts are iterative, conversational. So you probably have seen this before. You don't need to start a new chat with one of these tools every time you want to engage in conversation. So it is a back and forth, or what we call an iterative process. One of the things that is so popular now is this concept of prompt engineering. So we all have access to these tools, but how do we actually know how to use them? If you use these tools long enough, you get a familiarity with how they work, you get an understanding, basically, maybe not exhaustively, but basically how they're going to give you back information. So that concept of knowing how to prompt a tool and get back a good, quote unquote, good response is what we call prompt engineering. And if you come up with really advanced prompts that get really detailed responses in the ways that you want, that might be a skill that various companies find valuable. Now, some people think that prompt engineering is not real, that these tools change so often that it's really impossible to stay expert with them. So they consider it a buzzword. And you might not hear prompt engineering exactly when you look at different job descriptions and requirements, but you might consider adding tools that you're familiar with to your resume when you apply for jobs, especially if they are asking if you have experience using GenAI tools. Overall, though, what this comes down to is a sense of illiteracy. You are skilled in using these tools, you have experience, and even if you're not an expert, you feel comfortable using the tools as you go about doing your work. That, I think, is going to become more and more important as more and more companies buy and provide access to these tools and or require you to use them for certain things in your job. We are seeing that showing up in various industries, a requirement to use these tools. Now, I'm not going to say that that is something I like. There are problems with that, just as there may be potential good things about that. But if you can get experience and you know the lay of the land, you know what they are good at doing, for example, formatting meeting minutes, and you know what they're not good at doing, that may make you more competitive in the workforce. So here are some examples of prompts. Let's actually start with something that you may have used a GenAI tool for before. We heard proofreading, we heard meeting minutes. What about here in the room? Do you have any examples of how you've used these tools?
Collision code, 2D games.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about what that means? Collision code?
Collision code, yeah.
Okay.
So the game engine I use exposes a way of doing movement, collision movement in 2D space. So like running into a wall.
Running into a wall.
Running up slopes is
Running
another
up
big one.
Okay.
But it does a lot of things under the hood. And if you want to customize things about the movement, you'd have to write it yourself. So one of the big things I've been working on the past month or so, month and a half, is writing my own collision code and doing, it's called motion projection, projecting motion like up slopes, on the wall, on the ceiling, stuff
Okay.
like that. So that's kind of one of the big prompts.
Awesome.
Engineering things I've been working on.
Great, thanks for sharing. And if anyone did you all hear that? I don't know how powerful the microphone is. Okay,
Yeah, I heard
great.
that.
Anyone else want to share another example? I love how in detail that example is for your development of your video game. Okay, well, here are some examples that might also be inspiring. We can really prompt tools like ChatGPT and DeepSeek with anything we want and see what it responds. But here are some that, just to give you a wide variety. Why do so many people like poetry? Describe quantum mechanics to a 10-year-old. How do I make gluten-free pizza that tastes delicious? Can we talk about life, the universe, and everything? What can I do to get over test anxiety for my college course? Where should I look for information about the latest research in nursing? Please provide some feedback on my current resume. And you can upload your resume to some of these, or file to some of these tools. Turn this old scanned black and white photo of my grandparents into a cleaned up, realistic color picture. Put all of the dates from this month into a spreadsheet and include empty fields for tasks and the required team member. So these are a wide variety, just things that I came up with pretty quickly. A couple other things to note: if you want to look at document creation specifically, go to Claude and ask it to develop an application, like a simple video game, for example, or a simple scheduling app, or some kind of document that you might use, like a template for a meeting, or a template for a small business plan, or a project management document for something that you're doing administratively. And Claude will actually not only create the document, but it will create the files that you can download and have. And that can be very interesting to explore as well. You're not only getting the content in the tool itself, but you're getting files or artifacts that can be exported or downloaded to your device. I'm going to switch gears here and show you one tool as an example today for those of you that haven't seen much of GenAI in action, or maybe you've only used it a couple times, or maybe you've only used one tool. Here's one that I like to show to students because with Perplexity, it will provide sources for where it's getting its information for all of its responses, 100% of its responses. It's not just pulling information out of its data set, it's pulling it from the live web, and it's providing citations. Another reason I like to show this to students is that all students and employees at SCC get access to the Pro account for free. You can create your account with whatever email you want, but then you can upgrade using the upgrade button, which is right here in the bottom left, and you can select education and you verify using your student email, and then it's free and it doesn't cost anything. So that might be something interesting for you. I use Perplexity as a research tool, and I actually use it more than Google now for just finding basic information on the web. So for example, tell me the history of Spokane, and it will provide the sources at the very top. It actually provides a list of sources where it's getting all of its information. Note that it will get information from places like Wikipedia. So you do need to be aware of obviously reading and checking the information, but it does provide the citations, the sources that it's using for any of its particular information that it's providing. So you can follow up and read the source material from those different websites. And it is iterative. You can continue to have ongoing conversation or prompting with it. So I'm going to say Indigenous history, and then it's going to know that we're still talking about Spokane because it's able to refer back up in the conversation. And now it's going to tell me the Indigenous history, all about the Spokane people and pre-settler colonial history. You can also do a couple other things. One thing, if we go new chat and select the globe, we can actually use it academic sources only. So if we wanted to, latest research on quantum physics, it will look at academic journal articles. So if you're a student and you have to do a research project and you need academic sources for your paper, Perplexity can do that. It can look specifically in databases that have access to academic articles. And now this is again, the public web that it's looking in. So you might not have immediate full text access. You might have to use the SCC library to get access to that full text article. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
So now you've seen Perplexity in action. And I'm keeping track of time. I know we don't have a ton of time, so we're going to keep going here and hopefully get through all the content. Let's switch gears to ethics. So basically, when we talk about ethics, ethics is rooted in philosophy. In our conversation, we're really using a basic definition of what is good and what is bad, or what is right and what is wrong. And these are really complex discussions that have existed really since the dawn of humanity. And they talk about what is good and bad for yourself based on what you believe, based on what your opinion is, where you are in the world. And we have that in comparison and contrast with what is good and bad on a societal level. So everyone has their own autonomy, their own personal belief system, and all of that is good. That is good for you. and bad for you. What is good and what is bad for you is highly personal. But we also need to remember that there is a societal level in play as well. And what that comes down to is what is agreed upon and normalized in particular contexts. For example, what is agreed upon in the United States versus in China versus in South Africa versus in Mexico. You know, there's all of these different countries that have cultures, and those inform why we believe and agree upon certain things in terms of ethics. There's other smaller contexts as well. Here, we're at SCC. We are in a higher ed context. Things that are good and bad might be more nuanced here. You might also find that there are things that are good and bad, right and wrong at work, in your workplace, or maybe at home, or maybe in your friend group or your family circle. So keep that in mind as we go through the concept of ethics with GenAI, that we're really talking about what your experience is and your perspective is, and also comparing and contrasting that with the college, work, and society at large. So here are some really big ethical issues with GenAI. We have issues around citation and intellectual theft. Some of these tools don't provide citations. They don't tell you where their information is coming from. And if you use them when you're doing your work, you might actually be stealing ideas or plagiarizing from other people, especially if those tools aren't giving you the sources that you can cite. Access issues. There are access issues with GenAI in terms of what we were talking about earlier. Some of the tools are not free, or they have to be paid for to have access to the most advanced version of the language model or the advanced features. Also, not everybody has stable internet. So there are access issues around just basic use, having the internet so that you can access them. This is a huge one, environmental impact. So GenAI is wonderful. We see all of the possible uses of it, and it's wondrous, but it does have a cost. And that is that every time you use these tools, there are issues around electricity and water. Also, the data centers that these companies are building to process all of these LLMs are often being built on the land that is available. And often that land is potentially on or near a natural place, natural space that could be preserved. And if we are building things on these natural lands, what is that going to mean for the land now, today, and in 30 years, and in 300 years? There are major impacts on learning with these tools. So thinking about the proofreading process, for example, that came up earlier, if we're automating or streamlining proofreading, but we're just accepting the proofreading without thinking about it, are we still learning about where we need to grow as individuals who are writing? Same thing with the video game example. If some of this is automated and not manually done, are you aware of what it's doing fully when it's being automated? Are you actually reading all of the parameters and all of the nuances to that code as you move forward and you integrate that code into your product? An over-reliance on these tools and not reading deeply may be problematic with our cognition. Safeguards and oversight. So some of the material that these tools can provide is off limits, and they won't provide answers. For example, DeepSeek really doesn't like it. It's Chinese created, really doesn't like it when you call Taiwan a country. And that is obviously different perspectives, right? Different perspectives. There have been times when ChatGPT has not allowed discussion around certain political figures. Or if you want to research a history of a sexual topic or a topic that is connected to violence, it might not provide an answer. You want to learn how bombs are created. It might not provide an answer because it doesn't want to teach people how to make their own bombs. And again, going back to ethics, there's good and bad. Also, Why are we what are we going after when we're asking for this information? And with freedom of speech and academic freedom to research whatever we want to research, should these tools ban or censor certain topics? And also, where is there national regulation? Is it just up to the tech companies, or should the federal or local government regulate these types of topics? On a major note, there are also systemic biases in play in some of these tools, or in all of these tools. And what I mean by biases, I mean that everyone has a bias. Every written thing, every visual document that exists has some kind of bias. It's not necessarily going to be the worst biases that have existed, but we all have a bias when we do something. All come from our own perspective. But some biases that are systemic in nature, like racism and sexism and religious, for example, biases, these might show up when we're looking at tens of millions of documents and might inform responses that we get back when the responses have been trained on those biases. The tools might not know or be aware of those biases that exist. Some additional ones to consider: privacy considerations, workforce and job transformation, and how these tools are going to disrupt all of that, where it's becoming culturally normalized and where that might be problematic. There's also a whole group of people that outright reject GenAI. There is an anti-AI movement. And this idea that there is the right to reject, that even though more and more people are using these tools, when we use these tools, the right to reject people say, we are losing something in our humanity. And so we need to refuse. We need to not use these tools. So that's a whole conversation there. GenAI tools, GenAI usage follows viral trends, sorry. Here's a really popular one this month with the villain from the Scream movies and people putting themselves on bed with popcorn and a phone. And there's also this idea of brain rot. That's a common one. And AI slop is a common one. The fact that we can generate and create things with these tools doesn't necessarily make it original, to use that viral trend, or intellectually contributing to the world. Like with all of these ridiculous characters, there are some cultural conversations around the problems of that. So real quick, and then we're going to wrap up here. How can GenAI be helpful in higher ed? We've talked a lot about how we've used it already, but thinking about where these tools might benefit you as students, you may find these tools useful in learning with familiar or friendly voice. They might be able to support you with whatever learning style you have, or maybe you have a learning disability. They could be useful in supporting that. Precision in answers, iterative conversations, which we talked about. There's also a general ease of use with these tools. They're relatively easy to use. Some things to be aware of when we're using these tools at the college. Here are some examples of unethical use. Entering your assignment as a prompt in the tool and having it do all the work for you. Using that information that you get from the tools as credible or authoritative. Remember, even Perplexity is using Wikipedia, so that might be a problem. We're wrapping up.
Yeah.
And then using any of these tools without providing a statement to your professor or instructor can be problematic. And then not including citations can be problematic. Here are some examples of ethical use. We already had the proofreading as a good example. Some students might like the tools as being idea generators for brainstorming and assisting in creating new works, editing or refining work you already have, retrieving information, as I showed you with Perplexity. It can be really useful. Some of these tools can be useful in that way, or even explaining concepts that you don't understand to get another perspective. We are seeing products emerge around GenAI tools that become tutors or personal assistants. And those are not supposed to replace your instructor, but just provide another layer of support, especially if you need help understanding concepts. In the workforce, we already talked about integration and other tools. These tools can help managing workflows, creating business documents and templates, helping you write emails in specific tones, or setting meeting agendas, and even translating. If you're in a multi or bilingual situation, or you work for a global company, these might be able to streamline translation efforts. And computer programming. You might write down the term vibe coding and see what that's all about, but a lot of people are able to use these tools without any programming experience and develop computer programming applications today using a concept called vibe coding. Final slide before we wrap up here. 5 recommendations I have for students before you go forward in trying to use this in your college classes. Always review the syllabus and assignment language and talk with your instructor on what is permitted. Be aware in advance that your professor or instructor might not like GenAI. Also, other students might not like GenAI. So be aware that there might be some controversial conversations around it. If you're going to use these tools, always state that you're using them when you're doing your work at the college. That will clear up, hopefully, a lot of possible controversy and conflict. Remember, acknowledge issues of over-reliance, impacts on learning, and remember, read what's coming out of the tools. Don't take it for granted. Critically think about what these tools are providing. And finally, the technology is always changing. You can come to these workshops to learn more, but it's important to also recognize that you have the ability to stay up on news and trends with GenAI, both at the college and in the workforce. So we're going to be sending out a LibGuide and the recording and follow-up surveys in the email that you provided when you registered for the class. There are 3 more sessions this quarter, one on they're all on image generation, and they're going to be taught by my colleagues, Toby and Melinda. So if you signed up for this one, if you're here today, you probably saw the information on these already. Does anyone have any last minute questions before we end the session today?
No.
Anything in the room? No questions are needed, but we are going to be transitioning to another class here in a second. So if you want to stick around and chat, we can meet outside. Anyone online, feel free to send me a message if you want, if you have any questions after the session's over. And thank you all for being here today.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, have a great day.